Hey, this is Kim. I'm here at Mind Over Matter Meditation Center in Holliston, Mass. And this is our weekend forecast. It is Sunday, April 3rd. So we have a little bit of ground to cover between the fourth quarter moon that took place on Friday, March 25th, and then the new moon that took place this past Friday on April 1st, or April Fool's Day. Hopefully you guys all got away unscathed and maybe just a little prank or two here or there, but I know kids can have some fun with that. My mom was regaling in a story of my brother and how he, when he was a kid, used to put a rubber band around the kitchen nozzle and got her every year. She forgot all the time. So I thought that was pretty fun. So we had a little bit of technical difficulties the week before. So we do have a little bit of catching up to do just to sort of set the scene for this past new moon. A lot of really interesting things happened around that fourth quarter moon and in that fourth quarter period. And just for me, I feel like it's all part of the story. It's all part of the unfolding. And to skip any part of the unfolding sort of doesn't necessarily help us understand how we got to where we are. And so each week as the moon is changing and we're all evolving, it's important just to keep track of how we got to where we are and not to become unconscious or to move about not being aware of where we are and why we are here where we are. So anyway, that being said, backtracking just a little bit onto that Friday, March 25th, it was the fourth quarter moon. And what's interesting about that is the March 11th, 2 weeks before that, was the day, I think it was 1990, where Lithuania celebrated its independence from Russia, which is interesting that was happening in this moon cycle because now on the 25th of March, we have the recognition of Greek independence from the Ottoman Empire, which ultimately led to the Constantinople Treaty. So a lot of independence, a lot of breaking free, a lot of recognizing in history. There seems to be this energy around this time of year before we launch into truly the new solar year. The new year really takes place on the first new moon after the spring equinox. So even though the spring equinox was the week before, we celebrate the new cycle by the first new moon that takes place after that, which was this past Friday, happening to land on April Fool's Day. And so the week in between really is about the full moon being about that highlight of the accomplishments that we gotten done or highlighting what we hadn't gotten done. And then that fourth quarter moon phase is that period of time where we can sort of clean up and finish up. It's finish up work. It's a finish up work from the seeds that were planted during the new moon at the beginning of the lunar cycle. And so what's interesting about a lot of interesting things actually happened in that past week. And I had pulled some cards for that reading and I thought it was particularly beautiful. I chose from the Animal Wise Tarot by Ted Andrews, who I adore all of his work. My Animals Speak book has been very well loved over the years, and I was so thrilled years ago to get this deck of cards. For me, I never had much luck or working intuitively with tarot cards directly wasn't as natural for me, and bringing in the animal aspect in the natural world, which is way more intuitive for me personally, has given me the opportunity to learn about tarot a little bit more intimately, which has been nice. And truly, any of these card decks, the Monology deck that I use, different tools of divination. Tools of divination are just designed to help us communicate with divine energy, creator spirit, whatever you want to call it. For me, I know that the natural world has always held a great representation of divine energy for me, and I really revel in my relationship with it, and sort of coming back into this second springhood of my adult that reminds me of when I was a child, of just how much I love nature. We sort of get a little muted down by life along the way, and it's just been a really nice way to reground and reconnect. 2020, when we were all sort of quieted and brought in, I saw more people out walking in our neighborhood, and it was just such a testament to when all else fails, get outside. connect with nature, connect with the spirit of the elements and the animals. And so this was really cool. So the card that came out of the deck for last week for the fourth quarter moon phase was Bear. And Bear is associated with the 10 card of the major arcana in tarot for Wheel of Fortune. And it's about heeding the inner voice and cycles. And this is really interesting because we've been talking a little bit about how to trust yourself and how to calibrate to your own inner being. And when you're calibrated to your own inner being, when you get into those quiet spaces, that inner call, that inner voice, that quiet, patient, always with you, always ready to guide you voice is really calling us, especially like Bear, as Bear is coming out of hibernation and coming out into the world. Are we paying attention to the cycles that are going on for us personally and not what everybody else is doing? Bears don't go around to each other's dens at the end of winter being like, oh, you know, how messy is your den, or what business didn't you get taken care of, or how ruffled is your fur? Like, they don't do that. But we tend to do that as we're coming out into spring, and we start this very it's very Aries energy in the aspect of putting yourself first, but then coming into that place of comparison to other people. And so Aries is one of the 4 cardinal signs, and the cardinal signs are about natural leadership. And so it makes sense that the first sign of the solar year is a leader sign, is a cardinal sign, to lead us off into the next 12-month journey around the zodiac and into this next lunar cycle kicking off on April 1st. So Bear came in to really remind us. And what's interesting is Bear came in reversed. And so what it means when a card is reversed is when it comes out of the deck not upright, but it's upside down. And so the reverse message of Bear has to do with really the repercussions of what happens if we haven't been listening to our inner voice, or we have been comparing our den to our neighbors or whatnot. That's sort of keeping up with the Joneses, and then the repercussions of that. And really just more encouragement to focus on your personal cycles and your own inner voice. And so as I was putting the card back into the deck, it was interesting because Coyote literally jumped out like, hey, don't forget about me. And so Coyote is the first card at 0, and it represents the Fool. It is all about wisdom and folly. And so Coyote is just such a beautiful, beautiful animal. And so Coyote came along because if you think of the way coyotes hunt, they hunt in packs. They're very intelligent. They're also very much about play and fun. So they're smart in the way that they work together, and they represent this playfulness at work. So if you haven't been enjoying your work, if you feel like it's been all work and no play, Coyote comes along to really remind us that it is about the fun of the work, because the work ultimately is about getting us, it's just a means to the end. Maybe what we're doing in the moment doesn't seem fun, but we can have fun in the spirit of what we're doing, because life is fun. And if this little piece of what we're doing is part of the bigger piece, which is really fun and really exciting and wonderfully engaging, then maybe this little thing that we're doing in the wisdom of what we're trying to extract out of a moment doesn't have to be so dry. The other thing that's interesting about Coyote is Coyote comes along to remind us of the cooperative components. So I really feel like Coyote came in to say, not only listen to your inner voice, but once you do and you function from that place, you become a point of attraction. And as you become a point of attraction, it's not about having to do everything yourself. It's about magnetizing all the co-creative components of the universe that can support you in manifesting whatever dream or thing it is that you are trying to get off the ground. And so it was just really beautiful to see that symbiotic relationship between the nature of the two animals. What was really interesting was just a few days after this happened with the card pull, when I had originally done it for the reading for March 25th, is I was going through my wallet. And of course, you know, I talk a lot about what happens when we encounter animals in nature. And for as much as there are bears around here, the chances of maybe seeing a bear in, you know, real time maybe farther and fewer between. So I was pulling change out of my wallet, and I had a handful of different coins, and something said I had some quarters, and they were face up, face down. They were all over, and one had been turned over that was face up, so the marking on the other side was down. And so, as many people in the states know, for a bunch of years, the state quarters, a quarter was designated for each state, and it was given an emblem of some sort on the back, whether it was an animal, a building, a plant, something that associated that state with this coin. And so I got this real warm and fuzzy right as I was flipping it over, warm and fuzzy. So fuzzy. It was a bear. It was the coin from Alaska. It was a quarter from Alaska, and it had bear on it. And it just went through me in this way of that connectedness, that feeling of when you're just in the right place, you're onto something, your intuitive hits are getting this validation. And so it was really beautiful to have bear appear in my life in the way that it did. What's even more fun is that night as I was driving to pick up my son, and it was dusk, it was just enough light to be able to discern things, but not quite light enough to see everything clearly. And a coyote trotted, didn't even run, it was trotting. It was running in this incredibly bouncy, playful manner right in front of my car, almost slowing down as it was crossing the street, and kind of wiggling its butt a little bit, like, hey, do you see me? It was just so amazing. It was so amazing. So the funny thing about all of this is here I am reveling in these messages from Spirit. And I had been cleaning out my garage and cleaning out the house and working on moving some things around. And so I just obtained some storage space to be able to see things and just put things in places in the interim so they don't get lost or damaged. And I was thinking to myself, wouldn't it be wonderful if I could manifest some shelves, some just plain simple plastic garage shelves? La 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 la, go about my day, go about my business. I leave, I go to drive, and I was on my way to do another errand. And there was a house on the side of the road that literally had 2.5 heights of these stacking plastic shelves by the driveway. And I thought, oh my God, there are my shelves. But I had stuff in my car, and I was so fixed on, I'm going to do this, then I will go pick up a big enough vehicle to be able to put these shelves in. And some of you may already be laughing at this point about why that was even a silly thought. And so because I was in my ego state of doing, and I was in that focus zone of, this is my list and this is what I need to do and this is how it needs to get it done, I was missing the very simplicity of, and I was praying to the whole time that, that I'm going to go and get this larger vehicle to put these shelves in. Please, please, please let them be there. And it wasn't a couple seconds later as I drove by that I laughed to myself and said, wait a minute, you're not paying attention. You're not listening to the inner voice right now that's saying that there's another way to do this, which is these shelves come apart. They're stacking. They come off of their legs. You could easily fit them into the car with the things that you already have in here, and it would be fine. And I knew in that instant when I turned around and went back that they would be gone, and they were. And so it really was this listening to the inner voice, asking and manifesting. When you get really good at being present and you need something, want something put out there that you want to manifest this thing, it literally just shows up, sometimes right on the side of the road. And it was the reverse bear. It was absolutely about not listening to that inner voice that would have said, take a second and think about how else you can do this. When I'm centered and grounded, I don't let that one way of looking at something and that's not going to work deter me from figuring out another way to make it happen. But in this moment, because I wasn't listening to that voice, in that coyote energy of the co-creative component, the working together, they were literally in the process of cleaning out their garage and put these shelves out was all right there to happen. And so it's missed opportunities when we're not listening to the inner voice. And that was like the crux of everything that sort of came about that fourth quarter moon period. I know, at least for me, was, where am I listening to the inner voice, and where am I stuck in, this is how it needs to get done? Because we don't really leave a lot of co-creative room when we're in that space. And so really the natural cycles, we're really talking about how natural cycles are changing. We're seeing that with weather patterns. We're seeing that in people. I'm noticing that in interpersonal relationships, which is really beautiful, that people's automatic tapes that they're sort of hitting the button on in certain circumstances. I'm watching and observing people take a moment and choose not to come back and replay an automated response, but to really take a moment, even if they don't realize that that's what they're doing. I'm watching them take a moment and sink into themselves of where they are in the minute and feel their way into the response that's appropriate for where they are. That, I'm getting teary just thinking about it, in the sense that it's beautiful. It is beautiful when you witness somebody that you've known behave a certain way for so long. And that gets, it's like if you were to play one track on a record over and over and over and over and over and over, you're going to get stuck in that groove. And so in Kundalini Yoga, I learned a term called samskara, and it represents that groove. It's that rut in the mind. It's that track that we get stuck in. It's when those thoughts come in and they sort of automatically push us into that groove. It's comfortable. And it's interesting too, because it does feel a little bit like that false sense of security, like the devil you know better than the devil you don't know. And so the fear of the unknown sometimes can be so great that the complacency that happens with the things that are unsatisfactory tends to be some place that we can stay because we're just stuck in that groove. And so mantra meditation, which is something we practice here at the center, and we'll be having more specific workshops around specific mantras for invoking specific things or breaking certain habits or inducing certain healthy states or whatnot. Basically, the ultimate idea is that you have this vibration that's coming in the form of an unwanted thought. And if it's something that's familiar, it's going to go right into that samskara. And so the idea is that on the other side of it, you have this mantra, this energy, this vibration. And so mantra is the use of sound. It's a lot of what's in the mantras for Kundalini Yoga is in Sanskrit, which I particularly like because my conscious mind and ego can't recognize the words, and it just allows the vibration sort of in that back door of the subconscious. The beautiful part about that is they're energetically designed to smooth out that samskara. It's like a Zamboni for your subconscious mind, right? And so it comes in and it just gently and lovingly offers this vibration. So you have this unwanted and you now have this wanted. And slowly it just works its way and pushes that unwanted thought out. And it also is filling those grooves with the new vibration, so that eventually over time, your automatic tapes don't just happen. You don't just go to them. They literally become less accessible because they're not in vibrational harmony with where you are right now. So whatever thought you continue to give attention to is the one that's going to be the foremost vibration in your consciousness. And so it really is just about picking and choosing which of those vibrations you want to be more forefront than others. So we'll talk more about left and right brain and all the things that go into that too over time. It's all very, very interesting, but it's all very interconnected as well. And so as we move into the new moon that took place this last Friday on April 1st, on April Fool's Day, we are going back into that beginning cycle. So it's the darkness, it's the nothingness. And in the magic of the moon, nothingness is revered. It's really something that is looked at in a very high honored way, because out of nothing, everything is born. Everything came from nothing. at some point in the beginning of its existence. So before the birth is the nothing. So Anahata is the heart center, is the heart chakra. It's the green one here. It's right in the chest. And it represents the unstruck sound. And so it is, I play the gong for meditation, and it's literally the creative space between the mallet and the gong of nothingness, of the intention of the vibration that's going to take place when that mallet strikes the gong. It's the intention that takes place when you have a feeling before it comes into form, that unstruck sound of the heart. What's beautiful too is the heart has many channels in it. One of the 3 channels are Om. It's Om 1, Om 2, Om 3. And so Om chanting, speaking of mantra, is a beautiful way of connecting with the creative sound of the universe and love, and really universal love, unconditional love. I highly, highly recommend the practice and look forward to having more people in studio doing that together really soon. Because when you have a collective group practicing that mantra together, it is said to, it works like a fulcrum, sort of this energy, this toroidal energy field. And so you have this upward and outwardness of it. And the more people that you have bringing the sound in and up and out, it expands the energy of that practice outward and outward and outward and outward, and really does just bring love into the whole community. And ultimately, you really can impact the whole world with a loving vibration. So if you've never practiced Om chanting, I highly recommend it. It's very cool. And so with this new moon, I did pull a card from the Monology by Yasmin Boland. Again, I love this deck. So what's interesting is I have this beautiful pinkish card of be bold and make the first move. So it's representing the cardinal moon. And so we were just talking about the cardinal signs, and here we are having a new moon in Aries, which is the first cardinal sign. And so it's about leadership. Again, we're talking about being bold and making the first move. And interesting too, funny how it all lines up. I didn't plan it this way. So the heart chakra, which we were just discussing, which is, I'm trying to hold my book page at the same time, need more hands. So up here we have the green. So it's the heart center. Pink is the color of the higher heart center. So Om Mani Padme Hum is another mantra. It's associated with Kuan Yin, who's a deity who's associated very much with love and compassion. And so the jewel in the lotus, if the lotus is the heart, the jewel inside is the pink. If the lotus is the green of the heart center, the jewel and the gem within that, which is you, is this beautiful pink color. So it's just wonderful how it all comes together. But it is talking about making the first move. So we're in a state, have been in a state for a few years now of, I think, waiting for the person who's gonna be your savior, or the one who's gonna come along and make the change, for you. Now that's a slippery slope. So change is here. Change is always part of our experience, but significant changes are upon us now. And if you're not somebody who does well with change, this can be a very uncomfortable period of time. And so changes happen for this cycle that we talk about with the unstruck sound, the nothingness, the seed planting, into the gestation period and the germination, into the manifestation, ultimately into the death and rebirth cycle. Like, we're just moving through that. And so it does have a lot to do with letting go. We work with that in yoga with prana and apana balancing. So prana is life force energy and apana is eliminating energy. And when you have too much life force energy and not enough eliminating energy, you can get really stuck and cluttered on the inside, and you can get very stuck and cluttered in your life, and change becomes extremely difficult. So if you're having trouble with any of those things, reach out. We can definitely work through that. So it's about choosing your change. So if it's a choice, so if you know change is coming, you basically have 2 ways of going into it. You can choose the way those changes look for you, or you can get dragged by life circumstances kicking and screaming, and it's a lot less comfortable than when you're choosing. Now, choosing doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be all smooth and rosy. It just means that it's more in alignment with the choices that you're making for you, and ultimately is going to lead you in a better direction and not lead you astray or get you further away from your path. So it talks very much about I'm taking charge of my destiny. So it's about assertiveness. I'm coming into your power. The time for action is now. So I saw the word asserted in the little book on the description of the card. And I had to laugh for my friends on Facebook who have seen my post. I was cleaning out the garage because, spring cleaning, and here we are really trying to start anew. And for me, it starts there. It really is like the mouth of our house. So I'm sort of working my way in and up that foundational ground level. And I found a really fun sign from I wish I had it with me. It's really cute. A yard sale from years ago when the kids were a lot younger, and they decided to sell refreshments. And so they have this big pink piece of paper, and it says lemonade, 50 cents. And I think Arnold Palmer was another option up in the corner. And then at the bottom, I think it was my middle daughter at the time, who was always a phonetic speller. I love finding her writings from when she was little because there's no vowels whatsoever. So it was all just very phonetic and sounding the way she spelled out. So as she was learning her vowels, they came a little bit slower. So underneath lemonade, it says asserted candy instead of assorted candy. So to pull the card that was talking about assertedness, and to just seeing the sign saying asserted candy in my garage, again, it is just like the bear coming through the cards, because that energy had a message for us through nature and through spirit, and then pulling the quarter. And so even going back to the quarter and 25 cents, interesting, we were just talking about 25 cents for the asserted candy. That came out the other day too, when I was thinking about the birds. I love birds. My happy place is watching birds fly. All I have to do is think about watching a bird in flight, and I light up from one end to the other. And I feed the birds on my windowsill. So in the winter, the bird feeders were getting full of snow. And some years ago, I discovered that our awning, our overhang of the house, the eaves, create a nice covering over the brick layment outside of the picture window. And so there's the two little sliding windows on the side, which is just enough that I'm able to get the bird seed out onto the windowsill. And so I was thinking about birds, and I was thinking about the hierarchy within birds and how amazing it is to watch when the food goes out. Who competes with who can be on the windowsill at the same time, what happens when a squirrel shows up. It kind of, throws the whole thing off. It's fun. It's a lot of fun, and it is so telling. And so as I was sort of thinking about my love of birds, a quarter had fallen out of, I honestly don't even know where it came from. My grandfather was very much into magic, in the sense of physical, manipulation and illusion, of that kind of magic and magician. And so pulling quarters out of my ear since I was a kid. And so this quarter just showed up. And when it landed eagle side up. And so as we were talking about earlier, there are so many varieties now of coin and quarter that it really could have been anything on the other side of that, but it was an eagle. And to me, and I've seen so many more of them around here, and to me, eagles are very much about, liberty and sort of the pursuit of justice. I think that they're, a symbol of American culture and heritage for a reason. I think they have amazing connections to Native American lore, which I'm grateful for the founders of this country, the true founders, the true people who were living much more in accordance with the earth and the land that we walk on now than some of our forefathers were. And I feel like we're in a time of really healing that and bringing that into balance in so many ways. So again, what's interesting is I was coming out of my garage yesterday, and there was a hawk sitting right in the tree. I hear them in the neighborhood. I see them fly overhead, but never in all the years that we've lived at this house have I actually walked out my door and seen one so close. And I didn't quite see it right away. They blend in very, very well, but it moved its wings and let me know. I think it was interrupting its hunting, which ironically enough, I think my cat ended up with the thing that the hawk was going after. But it was still in my field and in my presence, in a closeness, in a very intimate way. Again, I get this sort of almost choked up in the back of the eye feeling when things are so loving that there's just this outpouring of emotion that wants to take place. So again, just that validation. So seed planting, here we are, new moon. What are we going to do with it? What choices are you going to make? What can you do with the darkness and the germination period? What seeds are you going to plant for this coming lunar cycle? Based on where you are in this moment, based on how you got here and the choices you made up until this point, what can you do to grow? What can you do to birth yourself? What can you do to give birth to your dreams? And it isn't about deciding you want that proverbial baby and tomorrow it's going to be here. It is very much about the gestation. It is very much, that's the joy is in the gestation. The joy is not just the thing when it comes to manifestation. And obviously with things like babies and children and baby animals, you know, the joy is an ever extending thing through the life of this being. When we're talking about inanimate or ethereal or ideological things, it's that metaphoric giving birth to. And so gestation takes time. And so if you try to force a birth, you can end up with a premature product. And so this was interesting. So Ted Andrews, again, has this deck called Nature Speak Oracle, and these great little green cards. And so this, if Animal Speak is really more about the beasts of our planet, this is much more about the nature, the weather, and the plants, the greens, the flowers, the trees, all those beautiful things that are starting to bud now here in the Northeast in the spring. It's just wonderful. And so I pulled Ivy, and Ivy is to stretch and to explore. And so what's interesting is, and funny, right in here, better the devil you know than the one that you don't. So that definitely speaks to that whole comfort level of inverse bear. And so reverse bear coming out and, you know, having that reluctance to change and not wanting to come out of hibernation, not wanting to have to deal with cycles, not wanting to have to do things differently, or kind of just wanting to grumble about and lumber about in, I say comfortable because they're familiar, but if they're not helping us stretch and grow, they're not necessarily comfortable. They're actually very restricting and confining. So Ivy came out reversed. And so it's that everything is in limbo right now. Nothing is moving. You feel safe with that. Better the devil you know than the devil you don't. If we're too passive in life, too locked into tradition, or the way things are, life will intrude. We are meant to grow and stretch, and if we become too complacent, we become mirrored in old repeating issues and problems. Why are these things happening to you? And so over the next week, I just really encourage you to find that quiet place where you can sit with yourself and your feelings and your heart. Maybe it is outside in nature. If it's a rainy day, even just observing the rain through the window and feeling that desire to be cozy and comfortable. And think about where you are. Are you coming out of hibernation ready for new? Or are you reluctant to make that exit from hibernation and come fully into yourself? Are you stretching and exploring as you come out of hibernation and willing to see what's out there with new eyes? Or are you trying to drag yesterday or how you felt when you were going into hibernation still with you as you're coming out of hibernation? And just observe. You don't even need to do anything with it except become aware. Because as you become aware, you will begin to shift on a deeper level. Your inner being will pay attention to the fact that your outer being is no longer satisfied with what it used to be satisfied with. And that's when your inner being starts to get really excited because it knows part of you is waking up to a new level. You're sort of like leveling up within yourself. We talked about in a previous video, I think just the last one I had done 2 weeks ago, about how life is a game. Life is absolutely a game. And so it is about leveling up within yourself. The competition is only right here. It's only with you. We're not competing with anything outside of us. I heard a great expression a few years ago actually about I'm not getting older, I'm just I'm leveling up. I love that. I absolutely love that, because it does really honor this acquisition of wisdom and experience. And hopefully, as you are unfolding and leveling up and learning even more about yourself, you're deepening your connection to yourself. And as my shirt says, shift happens. So there's a shift happening, and it's going to happen whether you're on board with it or not. So it's just a matter of where do you want to be when that shift takes place. So thank you so much. I really hope that you stuck in there for our extended version, sort of 2-week forecast, getting us caught up, helping us to see how we got to where we are right now, looking forward with a brightness, with a freshness, with a hope, with a love that goes out and pervades absolutely everything and everybody. So I love you all. Love to the earth, love to the people, love to all of our beasts, love to the sun, love to the moon, the magic of the moon. Really just expressing so much gratitude and love for all of it. I look forward to seeing you next weekend with our weekly forecast and to see what we're heading into in this next lunar cycle. So be well, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and have a fantastic day.